I had a dream. This is before Twilight came out, mind you. I had a dream, and mostly when I have dreams, I write them down. Do you all do that? Yeah, it's very important for your writing. Well, you got to start doing that tonight. Yeah, tomorrow morning. Once I've got it on paper, I usually can find the germ of a story idea in it. So in this particular book stemmed from a dream in which I heard a voice, not my voice, but a young woman's voice, that was poignant to me. And I wrote, it was about a girl who never knew who her mother was. So I wrote it down. I wrote about 4 pages. I read them aloud to a couple of friends and family members. They liked it. They thought there was something there. And that's kind of what I recommend beginning writers do. Record your dreams, record your chance, your found sentences that come to you when you're walking around. Record images that just don't add up to you. And then later, share it with a couple of friends and see if it doesn't also mean something to them. And if it does, then you're on your way to a novel, betcha, or at least a good short story. What I wrote down became the preface of this book. I sent the preface a detailed 7-page single-spaced outline because I could see what this book wanted to be. I've never had that experience before, but it came that way. And the outline and 3 sample chapters. I sent them to my agent. And lo and behold, she called me up one day when I was actually in class and said, guess what? 2 editors want it. You get to choose which one. That's the kind of day that all writers should have. And if you're a writer, I hope you have that day too, because I was walking on air. I got to have a phone call with each of the editors, one at Scribner, one at Simon & Schuster, and I got to choose. I'm going to read just a little bit from it because I got to choose the identity of my characters, people, again, I wanted to spend time with. I enjoyed their company. I got to choose my settings, so I moved from upstate New York, which is where I'm from, to Florida, which is where I am now. I got to incorporate elements that I enjoy. I like to eat raw oysters. Don't make a face if you hate them. And I decided that my vampires would subsist largely on artificial blood and oysters. Where would these people live? Well, one very popular place I decided would be Florida. And where in Florida but Homosassa Springs, which I'd never been to, but it had more S's in its name than any other place in Florida, as far as I could find. So then I got to do the research. I got to go to Homosassa Springs. And the part that I'm going to read is when my main character, Ariella Montero, arrives in that town for the first time. She's 12, going on 13. Or going on 30, as her father says. She's been homeschooled by her father, living in Saratoga Springs. She's very bright and articulate. She's never known the identity of her mother, and she's really not too sure about what her father is up to in the basement where he has a lab. And turns out he's making artificial blood and he's a vampire. Now, I did not set out to write a vampire book. I set out to write a coming-of-age story, but by the time I got to the 2nd chapter, it started getting fairly gothic. And then it just occurred to me, well, what if the dad was a vampire? And then once that happened, the rest of the book just came to me. I didn't want to use Dracula-type vampires as my trope. I wanted my vampires to have special powers. Among them, the ability to turn invisible, because that's something I always wished I could do. I also wished I could fly, but I didn't let my vampires fly because I thought that would be going too far. They don't have glittery skin. Again, this is before the Twilight books came out. When the Twilight book came out the next year, that's one of the sadder parts of the story. But I will get to it. I wanted my vampires to enjoy raw oysters and to be able to turn invisible and to live forever as long as they took care of themselves. Lots of sunblock, a good diet, good artificial blood. Those are the basics. So this takes place when she gets into beautiful Homosassa Springs. The last leg of my journey was the easiest of all. Thanks to the United States Postal Service, I got a free ride to Homosassa Springs. In Winter Park, I found a post office and asked the clerk whether a letter to Homosassa Springs could be transported directly there. He looked at me as if I were crazy. I'm writing a paper about mail delivery, I said as an excuse. He said a letter addressed to Homosassa Springs would first go to the Mid-Florida Processing Center in Lake Mary. So that's where I went, via the postal truck. I felt a little like an urban legend, the invisible guest in the passenger seat, but the driver never glanced in my direction, except to look at his side mirrors. The road was dull and flat from Winter Park to Lake Mary, and once we arrived at the processing center, it wasn't hard to find a truck being loaded with westbound mail. The driver whistled incessantly as the landscape changed from flatness to slightly rolling hills. By late afternoon, the truck arrived in Homosassa Springs, which looked like any of the several small towns I'd seen: gas stations, strip malls, cell phone towers. And I thought, not for the first time, if you ever want to hide from the world, live in a small town where everyone seems anonymous. When the driver left the truck, I pulled my backpack out from under the seat and climbed out. And then, standing in the shadow of an oak tree, I willed myself visible and walked around the parking lot and into the post office. The clerk inside, a middle-aged woman with dark hair, stood with her back to the door. She was talking to someone in a room off to the left of the counter. I pulled a photo album out of my pack and opened it. When she turned around, I said, "Excuse me, do you know this woman?" The clerk looked from me to the picture and then back at me. "I may have seen her around," she said. "Why do you want her?" "She's related to me." I couldn't say the words "my mother" to a stranger. "Where are you staying?" But the clerk was thinking, "What do you want with her?" I didn't mention my vampires can read thoughts. Something else I think I can do from time to time, but it's probably just me telling a lie to myself about that. There are also synesthetes. Does anybody know what a synesthete is? Somebody who, yeah, it's when your brain is wired differently, so you see words and numbers in colors and textures, sometimes with smells associated. I'm a partial synesthete, not a total one. I wish I were a total one. Anyway, and I've met several real ones since I started doing book tours for this book. What do you want with her? I don't know yet. I just came into town. Well, when you find out where you're staying, come back and leave a note. Ask for me, ask for Sheila. I'll make sure she gets it if she happens to come by. Slowly, I shut the album. I felt tired, hungry, and out of ideas. The woman was thinking, am I doing the right thing? Are you looking for a hotel? She said. There are 2 in Homosassa down the road. And she gave me directions. I thanked her and left. Trees overhung the narrow road on both sides, and I made my way along the roadside path, past small wood houses, a library, a restaurant, a school, all sleepy looking. I felt I was plodding toward nothing. Ahead, a billboard advertised the Riverside Resort, where an invisible guest would shortly check in. This time I entered the room through a balcony door. She has done this before in Savannah. She crashes hotels. She doesn't have much money. It's not a good thing to do. Don't do that. I had to try 3 balconies before I found a door unlocked. Inside, I drank the last of my tonic. The tonic is the supplemental blood stuff. And then I sat on the balcony and watched the sunset on the Homosassa River. The blue-green water was speckled with fiery orange, like a bloodstone. Later, a visible me went to the hotel restaurant and ordered 24 oysters on the half shell. The restaurant had glass windows overlooking the river and a nearby small island with a red-striped, fake-looking lighthouse on it. This is an actual place, by the way. You can go there. You can try the oysters. They're good. As I watched, an animal, large and dark, moved through the trees. Bob's restless tonight. The server set down a silver tray of oysters along with bottles of hot sauce and cocktail sauce. Bob? The monkey, she said. Anything else? No, thanks. And as I ate, I watched Bob the monkey pace the island. Once again, the oysters worked their magic. I wondered what gave them their subtle flavor, as fresh and electric as ozone after a thunderstorm. With every mouthful, my energy and spirits revived. At least the postal clerk had recognized the photo, I thought. Of course, my mother would be in her mid-40s now. She probably looked different. How hard could it be to find someone in a town as small as Homosassa Springs? The server asked me if I wanted anything else. Another dozen, please, I said. When they arrived, I asked her, are these oysters alive? They're fresh shucked, she said. I looked lovingly down at the plate, the beautiful, plump, gray morsels still attached to the mother-of-pearl-colored shells. Whenever they died, I hope their death wasn't painful. Anything else? The server tapped her foot. More crackers, please, I said. Once back in the room, I went out to the balcony. I looked for Bob the monkey. He had a playmate I saw now, a smaller monkey swimming from a rope bridge strung between the two trees. As I watched, 2 pedal boats approached the island, and people on board took out their cameras. Bob and his friends stopped playing. They walked down to the island's shoreline. Standing side by side, they stared at the cameras. Can't they swim? I wondered. I sent them sympathy and a silent farewell. Well, she goes back later and rescues the monkeys. I'm spoiling the book for you. But because I was there and I wanted to rescue the monkeys. And the thing about writing fiction is it's wish fulfillment. She could actually communicate with these monkeys. These poor monkeys, I found out later, they replaced them periodically, but the original monkeys on the island were monkeys that had been used to test polio vaccines. And poor monkeys, you know, and then they stuck them on the island, and yeah, I know, it's wrong. Like so much of what goes on, it's wrong. But in my book, the monkeys are freed. The world is a better place. Yeah, wishful thinking, wishful thinking.